Hi, good evening. Welcome to Sports Today. Stumps on day five at the World Test Championship final in Southampton between India and New Zealand. It's interestingly poised, this game. India were bowled out for 217, New Zealand bowled out for 249, and at stumps on day five, India are 64 for 2 with Chiteshwar Pujara and Virat Kohli in the middle. India have a slender lead. They lead by 32 runs. Of course, ironically, in that innings change, in New Zealand had a lead of 32 runs when they got bowled out for 249. Now then, how is this game poised? First of all, technically all three results are possible: an Indian victory, a New Zealand victory, or draw. Well, who knows, a tie, right? If we're going to be too dramatic about it. But um, look, at the end of this day, it does look like New Zealand have the upper hand. Why? First off, India bowled brilliantly, and New Zealand resumed their first innings on 101 for 2 earlier in the day at the start of play on day 5. India were brilliant, especially Mohammad Shami, Ishant Sharma, getting those crucial wickets. Shami, of course, starting the slide for New Zealand with the wicket of Ross Taylor. Kane Williamson held on for that 49. Good innings down the order from Kyle Jamieson, Tim Southey. Very, very useful runs, but India just kept pegging away and bowled New Zealand out for 249. Coming into bat, India lost Shubman Gill early. He fell across the line and was trapped LBW by Tim Saudi. Rohit Sharma and Cheteshwar Pujara thereafter looked really solid, but runs were just not easy to come by. The Indians were again losing Rohit Sharma at towards the end of day's play, and Rohit was looking really solid, falling for the 30s for the second time in this match. Virat Kohli and Cheteshwar Pujara in the middle now, of course, when they come back and commence on the reserve day. Remember, there's a reserve day in this World Test Championship final. A lot of time has been lost to rain. Two whole days washed out. Early closure on day two, where 64.4 overs were possible instead of 98. So plenty of time has been lost to rain, bad weather, really. So this is remarkable that both teams have now placed themselves at a situation where some results can still be possible, and we're not just taking a draw for granted. The weather forecast for tomorrow is much better than what was in the previous 5 days and the previous 4 days leading up to this day of high octane test cricket. It has been really high octane test cricket. Whether you look at Kane Williamson's innings, one of absolute stubborn defiance, whether you look at those cameo from Kyle Jamieson, those useful runs from Tim Southey, or the spells from Mohammad Shami and Ishant Sharma, or then again some superb bowling from New Zealand, especially Tim Southey picking up those two wickets of Shubman Gill and Rohit Sharma. Rohit Sharma would have been really gutted with that dismissal. He was looking to leave that ball outside the off stump, what he thought would be outside the off stump, but it really was a straight one from Tim Southey. It's been a spectacular bowling performance from New Zealand. I was talking on my earlier broadcast about how New Zealand will need to bowl much better than they did in the first hour of day one, of day two, when Kane Williamson asked India to bat. Sachin Chaudhary is asking what target would should be set by the India team. Some of you have Indrajit Roy Chaudhary, for instance, saying India play 45 overs, score 160 and declare 190 with 50 overs to spare. Look, these are numbers, these are interesting numbers, but then again, easier said than done. Abhinav Rangarajan, Rohit, well played. It was again absolutely brilliant, Rohit Sharma, with his commitment and with his application. But the fact is, if you look at it theoretically, yes, all three or four results are possible. But you'd have to say somewhere New Zealand have the upper hand because of those two wickets, and also the fact that for India to really push on for a result, they needed to score a little more quickly. But runs were not very easy to come by. So they played out 30 overs. They have so far played out 30 overs in their second innings and managed only 64, losing Shubman Gill and Rohit Sharma. Three sessions tomorrow. Um, how do they go on from here? The first session will be important. The first hour will be very important. First off, India would not want to lose too many wickets, and from there on, they'd want to accelerate and give their bowlers a good enough total to defend. They would also want to be risk proof in the final of this World Test Championship. This is not a four-match series. This is not a three-match series where you can always come back in the next Test match. You'd want to be really risk-proof. I'd feel. Um, therein lies the tricky situation with India. What should be a safe total for them? New Zealand, on the other hand, would really hope to restrict India for, let's say, if they bowl them out for, they get another 100, 120 runs and looking to chase 150. That would be tricky in itself, but still they'd be giving themselves plenty of chance. How much should India be happy with? Would they like this target could be somewhere in the vicinity. Let's say India scored 160 from here on, and then would hope to put New Zealand to bat for 50, 55 overs with a score of 200 and with a required rate of 4.5 runs and over. Would New Zealand be tempted to go for it? Would that give India more chances of getting wickets? Would in those two spinners come into play if the sun comes out again? And what sort of impact can Jasprit Bumrah have? He looked a little off color for most of his spells, but again with the second new ball, he did look hostile. He did look a lot better. Was just unfortunate to not add to that wickets column. Ishant Sharma, Mohammad Shami, on the other hand, were exceptional. Also remember, Mohammad Shami has been exceptional in second innings for India, especially if you look at overseas test matches. But when we're talking of all that, before that, India will have to get those runs. And from here on, getting to 160 or thereabout, and how many overs they do that in. So if you're looking at 40 or 50 overs, you're looking at about nearly two sessions, or uh, at least nearly two sessions. So that's going to be a real challenge. So I don't know whether those numbers are going to be reflective of what we see tomorrow. Like I said, it hasn't been easy getting those runs. It hasn't been easy batting, and New Zealand have been spot on with their bowling performances once again. Just with Bumrah would come back roaring in the rain. We hope so. Well, we as certainly as Indian fans, we hope so. But depending on how many runs India get, Shamik Das, unless India play pretty badly tomorrow morning, this test is going to end in a draw. Surely, what's your thoughts, Rajashi? Look, it's not just about the Indian batsmen playing badly. In New Zealand's bowlers have been superb. They have been in superb form, especially in the second innings. You look at top of four world-class bowlers there, four world-class bowlers who have been relentless, who've been brilliant. And Tim Southee is just so clever, isn't he? He's such a wily customer. Look at how he set up Rohit Sharma and the dismissal. You could see that in Rohit Sharma's expression. He was really disappointed with the way he got out. But you'd have to say that at the end he got outfoxed by Tim Southee. Will it end in a draw? Well, again, like I said, all three results still possible. You see some more aggressive batting from the Indians. You never know what can happen in the final session and a half on the final day. Again, remains to be seen how much the spinners come into play. But looking at results theoretically, you just have to say that New Zealand have that slight upper hand, have that edge, because from now on if they look to bowl India out for the next 150, 130, if they bowl India out in that first session, or just maybe go beyond that first session, New Zealand are not really looking at a really steep target if that happens to be the case. So you go back with both teams going back to the drawing boards after tonight's play and see what they'd want to do. But again, India, you've seen they've done the impossible. You've seen we go back to the Sydney Test, and you thought it struggled to draw that game if there was no rain. They did the unthinkable. You went to Brisbane, and you thought India would crash to a heavy defeat, and look what happened. So anything can happen on the final day. I'd say I'd just reiterate my stance and say that it could be an interesting finale to this World Test Championship. And look, whatever happens, it's one thing is guaranteed is high octane cricket. Throughout the day, throughout the fifth day, you saw some really good quality cricket. Excellent slip catching, excellent fielding, excellent bowling from both teams. Some superb knocks, very technically astute, correct knocks. Kane Williamson, Rohit Sharma, and some entertainment there from Kyle Jamieson as well. The big man, that all rounder, he was really uh, uh, entertaining there. Somebody's asked Shamik again, can ICC extend the test by one more day? No, Shamik, that is not possible at this stage. These rules had been made long back for the World Test Championship. for this particular tournament. In the future, whether they want to do it or not is something that we'll have to wait and watch to again guard themselves against weather and rain interruption. But it is nobody's fault uh, that the heavens just decided to open up in Southampton and surrounding areas this week. In fact, a few days back, we heard that it was nice and warm and sunny in Southampton. So there's not much you can really do about it. Furthering scoreboard pressure, yes, there will be scoreboard pressure, but again, that depends on how many India end up getting. What is India's intent? Do they want to bat out? Do they want to really get going and put pressure on New Zealand in those last 45, 50 overs? My gut feeling is that if Virat Kohli is he's the kind of captain who'd want to go for victory. They'd want to go for a win. Um, and maybe they bat around Chiteshwar Pujara, who can hold one end up, and you have some very aggressive batsmen, Virat Kohli, Ajinkya Rahane too, by the way. You've seen him play some really aggressive knocks over the years, and of course, then you have the likes of Rishabh Pant and Ravindra Jadeja. So there's a fair bit of firepower in that batting lineup if they want to um, push that case. So, and meanwhile, but on the other hand, you look at the fact that it hasn't been easy scoring runs against this attack. I think it is one of the most potent bowling attacks, one of the most potent pace attacks in the world is New Zealand's attack of Bolt, Saudi, Wagner, and Jameson. So it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a very interesting day of Test cricket. It's going to be a lot about, it's almost like a game of chess. When do we accelerate? Do we have enough on the board before we are we safe enough to declare if it comes to that situation? New Zealand, even if they're bowling India out, when they're chasing, will they be tempted to get those runs? Will they shut shop and look for a draw? So all of those possibilities are wide open for the fifth and the final day. So that's what we have for you from day from at stumps on day 5. But look, at the end of the day, isn't it just great to be summarizing this match and hoping that there are some results possible, and you'd realize that there are some results possible on the reserve day. Who would have thought day 1 washed out, day 2 so many overs lost, about 34 overs were lost on day 2, day 3 again stumps was called half an hour, 32 minutes early. Day 4 was completely washed out. Well, that's the thing with two very good teams. Now they're in a position where either team can would want to. Both these would still want to fancy their chances. But I think just watching this game from afar, I just think that New Zealand have that edge because India have struggled to get those runs in 30. Have really struggled to get too many runs, and they have lost both their openers. Again, India get some quick runs. You're right. The fourth innings scoreboard pressure could be telling on New Zealand. So it's fascinating. It's really fascinating to see where this match heads up. At the end of the day, it's going to be a pretty thrilling finale. A pretty thrilling end to this tournament of the World Test Championship. A lot of you have suggestions on scores: 184, 200. Devarko Chatterjee, Rajashri Kalkar weather update. He's asking me about tomorrow's weather update. Well, it looks a lot better. You could see the sun. You could see the sun peeping out probably tomorrow. That's what the forecast says. It's much better, Devarko. The weather forecast for the reserve day is much better than what you had in those 3 or 4 days of the World Test Championship. So that's the good news. The good news is that there is prediction for good weather, that there is forecast for good weather in Southampton. But again, it's England. It's in the English weather. It really wouldn't want to get too ahead of yourselves. Look at how it started. We all thought it was not going to rain. There would be little or no rain throughout day 5, and yet there was a slight drizzle just around, just close to scheduled start of play, and the pitch had to be covered, and play was eventually delayed. The start time was eventually delayed by 1 hour. So um, just let's keep our fingers crossed and hope for some very high octane cricket, because like I said, when you're looking at results, all 3 or 4 results are possible. But the fact is that before you get to that point, you will get to see some really good quality cricket, and the weather will permit you to watch some superb cricket. Well, again, looking at numbers, it's one thing to place numbers and say, okay, India bat for 40 overs and they look to score at 3.5, 4 runs and over. and get 160 more, and then put New Zealand to bat. Um, and get close to 240 or 50 overs. But remember, if India were to bat for 40 overs and get 160 from there on, they'd still need to get at 4 runs an over. It's not going to be easy against these bowlers. It is not going to be easy in these conditions, even though uh, to an extent you saw that on day five, gradually through the day, at some bits, the conditions for batting did improve, but it's still going to be a long shot for um, victory. It'll be very, very interesting. That's why this reserve day is very, very interesting. I am Malik. I just spoke about the same thing. They're playing for 40 overs tomorrow and get 250 lead. You're talking of you're talking of some really aggressive batting at that stage. Not that India are not capable of doing that, but all I'm saying is it's not going to be easy against the red ball, against these four uh, bowlers, Bolt, Southey, Wagner, and Kyle Jamieson. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this live broadcast. That's all that I have from Southampton in England. India 217 all out in their first innings. New Zealand taking a slender lead in 249 when they were bowled out for 249, and then India 64 for 2 at stumps after Rohit Sharma and Shubman Gill fell to Tim Southey. Virat Kohli is, of course, at the crease alongside Cheteshwar Pujara. Pujara's batting on 12, Virat Kohli batting on 8. And when they come back on that reserve day tomorrow, it's going to be very, very fascinating. Interesting day on the cards, interesting reserve day on the cards in this World Test Championship final. Do join us for more from Southampton. Do join us for more from the European Championship. We'll be live with you at 10 in the morning for further updates. And of course, in the lead up to this World Test Championship final, and once it's over, will India lift the trophy? Will New Zealand lift the trophy? Will both teams share it? Well, you'll all get to see that on that final day, on the reserve day. Thank you so much. Have a good night. Please do subscribe to Sports Today. Thank you very much for joining me.